I was regarded at Harvard Business School as being a communist.
This one is a bit of a mystery still, when my first tweet is going to happen.
Ken is fun, and Ken is a great friend to Barbie.
I call it catching the F train.
I was this fat unit, you know what I mean, in a suit, and it was clear that I was not the same as the others.
Hi everybody, and welcome to another Better Marketing podcast from WFA. Here we are in the new school term after, in my case, an unfashionably long summer break, but that's what happens when you semi-retire, so you can all look forward to that. But what you can really look forward to now is a chance to listen to the inimitable Bob Hoffman, not the bodybuilder, the Ad Contrarian. Hey Bob, how are you?
I'm great. How you doing?
Very well. Have you been confused with the bodybuilder before?
Not when my shirt was off. No, not ever.
Well, what a fantastic array of guitars, which we'll come back to, because maybe you could even sing us out. Do you do musical interludes?
No, I'm strictly amateur and a not very good amateur musician, but I love it. I'm enthusiastic, so that's why I do it.
Yeah, I suspect that's your usual self-deprecation. But anyway, what a delight to have you here. Lots to talk about. Obviously, as usual, serendipity is on our side because our favorite friends, Facebook, are back in the news, but we'll come back to them.
Yeah.
I thought it would be great to remind everybody that, you started out as an ad man. And in fact, once upon a time, you loved the ad business. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got into it, what you did?
Yeah, actually, I never intended to be an ad man. I was a science teacher, and I hated it. I was terrible at it. Teachers are wonderful people. They're patient and they're nurturing, and I'm neither patient nor nurturing, so I was really bad at it. And I had never studied, or I'd never taken a marketing or advertising class in my life. But I ran into a friend of mine who was a friend from college. And I asked him what he was doing, and he said he was working in advertising. And I said, "What is that?" And he said, "The commercials on TV, I write those." I said, "Whoa, that sounds interesting." He said, "Yeah, and you'd be really good at that." I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah." So he helped me put together a portfolio. It was terrible, but I put together a portfolio, and I went to see a headhunter in New York named Judy Wald, who was the star headhunter in those days. And she told me I'd never get a job in advertising, which, of course, being the pain in the ass I am, made me absolutely certain that I was going to get a job in advertising. So I took my book around, and I did get a job working at Panasonic, the electronics company in New York, in their advertising department. And I spent a couple of years there, and then I moved to San Francisco and joined a little agency as a copywriter, and the agency grew and grew, and ultimately we became the largest independent in San Francisco, and I wound up, first I was the creative director, and then I became the president of the agency. And we sold our agency to an Australian company, an international agency called Mojo in those days. And you remember Mojo. And I stayed with them for a couple of years, but they were a publicly traded company, and it was kind of a little too corporate and serious for my taste. So I left there after a few years, and I just did independent creative work for 3 years on my own. And that was great. I loved it, and it was lucrative, and everything about it was good, but I missed the agency environment. Agencies, they're terrible places to work, but great places to hang out. And I missed the hanging out part. And so I went back into the agency business with a fellow named Roger Lewis, and we started a new agency called Hoffman Lewis. And we did very well for about 15 years. And then the recession hit, and things went sour for a couple of years, and I was prepared to retire, but I felt guilty about retiring because the business was lousy during the recession. Then finally, after a couple of years, we built the business back up, and I felt good about retiring, and so I did. That was, 8 years ago. And here I am now as a professional loudmouth. So it's a second career, but it's been fun.
And
Yeah.
obviously, I'm same vintage of
Yeah.
advertising. We knew we were making a
Yeah.
difference because there wasn't much else going on.
Yes.
But was it a business you really enjoyed?
I loved it. I loved every, it was, advertising it's a hard business because, when we say it's an art, the client says it's a business. When we say it's a business, the client says it's an art. And so it's hard to win. Overall, I loved my advertising career and I have little to no regrets about it. Advertising is a fascinating business. It's about how human beings work, and human beings are, they're complicated, but it's fascinating to have to deal with it. And I really did enjoy it a lot. Yeah.
And what about your journey to becoming the Ad Contrarian? How did that happen?
Yeah.
Because you've really turned from a lover of the industry into one of its harshest critics.
Yeah, I still love the industry. I don't like where the industry has gone, to be honest. The way it started was in the late 90s when online advertising became a thing for the first time and the whole .com thing came up. And we were right in the center of it here in San Francisco. And we would have these companies coming to us. They were the most ridiculous ideas I ever heard in my life, and they were well funded, and I couldn't believe that people were serious about this. And I started writing about it to myself, because the way I can tell if I'm thinking straight or not is to write it down. And so I would write these little essays or notes to myself. And then the .com crash happened, and it turned out that I was right about a lot of it. But I kept writing because it was fun. And then our agency published a little book, and it was called, of all things, Performance-Based Advertising, which was before what is now called performance-based advertising, which is crappy online display advertising. But in those days, it didn't have that meaning. And we used it as a self-promotion device to give to clients, here's what we believe about advertising. And then after a while, I heard about blogging, and I turned those little essays into blogs. And, frankly, my agency partners hated my blog because it was so contrary to what everyone else was saying, and they felt it would turn clients off. So I did the blog separate from the agency. It wasn't attached to the agency website, had no relation to the agency. So I did that, and it was doing okay. And then after I retired from the agency business, I felt a little freer to say what I really thought. I had to be a little circumspect in what I said while I was the CEO of an agency, because there were people's jobs on the line. If I said something stupid and a client fired us, I wasn't going to lose my job, but 20 other people might lose their job. So I had to be sensitive and cautious. But once I left the agency and retired, then I felt free to say what was really on my mind. And I've been doing that ever since, I guess.
And I think you're now the author of not one, not two, not three, not four, but 5 Amazon best-selling business books. 5. That's amazing.
I've had 5. Yeah, I've had 5 #1 books in the advertising category at Amazon, and that's it's wonderful. I feel great about it. I'm stymied because I'm working on a 6th. I'm not really working on it. I'm thinking about what it should be, a 6th book, and I can't figure out what I want to do. I was up last night at 3 a.m. thinking about this because I want it to be something that 25 years from now, people can read and get some value from. But I also want it to be something that's relevant to the issues, the important issues that we're facing now that are so compelling to me. So, I'm lost between short-term and long-term, I guess, is what I'm lost between.
Oh, well, maybe our audience here will have some inspiration for you, Bob. But I know you've also been an inspiration to many of us. I had the great pleasure, I think it was, my word, time is racing by, almost 5 years ago. You and I were on one side of a debate in Toronto. I'm trying to talk about ad tech, a force for bad. I think I'm
something like that.
something like that.
Yeah.
And I think we started. There was a pre-vote thing, and we were 3 votes down. And when we finished, we were only 1 vote down. So it felt like a victory, but a Pyrrhic one. As I was remembering that, Bob, and reflecting on where we've got to now.
Yeah.
And maybe this is a theme for you. What's a shame is, despite some really horrendous data points and some blindingly obvious things that need to happen to change, not much has happened. We could
No.
possibly make the similar speech now. I mean, how are you feeling about things?
That's exactly what I was thinking. If we went back and looked at a video of what we said 5 years ago, I think we were 100% right, and the people on the other side were 100% wrong, and yet the same debate is still going on, and very little has changed, and the issues have become so much more compelling. The problems that ad tech and particularly tracking have created are so detrimental to some of our foundational beliefs as democratic societies, and nobody seems to care much about it. And it's not just about advertising anymore; it's about society. There's a lot of things that are happening that are dangerous, and we're not doing anything about it. And I think it's a shame.
Yeah, when you say we, I mean, I do think, we should say here, we're all culpable, all sides of this industry, because in the end, the clients fund the platforms, the agencies do the stuff, and the platforms are the ones that are quite correctly getting the kicking, but they're also making astonishing amounts of money, and
Yeah.
and not making the world a better place.
Yeah, and that's why it goes on. If they weren't making that much money, if there weren't so many people making so much money from what they're doing, it would be a slam dunk. But there's too much money going around. They've got their hands in too many people's pockets, and consequently, not much is happening.
And what about at the moment we're all reading about another whistleblower,
Yeah.
saying some pretty strident stuff, and it seems to me to be pretty fact-based as well.
Yeah.
How's that landing?
Well, I think there is always a contingent who doesn't want to believe the facts. And I write about it a lot in my newsletter, and I get emails back from people. How can you believe her? She's this, she's that, she's a shill, she's a this, she's a that. But you know what? She brought 10,000 pages of documents from Facebook along with her. So I don't care what she is. She could be a Martian. The 10,000 pages tell the story, not her. And the story is very clear. These people are untrustworthy. These people are not interested in fixing the problems that they've created. And, I don't know how you can, I guess there are some people who want to argue the other side of the case, but I don't see how you can.
And do you think, as we're supposedly approaching the cookieless world, do you think things will naturally improve?
No, I think things will get worse. They will find ways to track us that are just as damaging and harmful as cookies. And until there is some enforceable regulation about third-party tracking, we're going to be faced with this. Until the regulators get involved and do something that is enforceable, we're going to be faced with this issue. And I'm not a big advocate of government regulations in business and all that stuff, but this is something that we have proven, our industry has proven to be too irresponsible to take care of itself. We need someone else to be the grown-ups and tell us what we can and cannot do, because we haven't done anything. There have been some attempts, GDPR, and here in California there's what we call the CCPA, California's Consumer Protection Act, but they haven't been enforced. So what good is regulation that isn't enforced? It's the GDPR Most of the big tech companies, as I'm sure you know, are headquartered in Ireland because for tax reasons. So Facebook is there, Google is there, Microsoft is there, I think Apple is there. And so the Irish regulators are in charge of enforcing the GDPR regulations there. And they've, in the 3 years since GDPR has been in place, they've had 168 complaints against the tech industry, and they've resolved four out of
Wow.
168. So the enforcement is just not happening. And if enforcement isn't happening, the rest is moot, really.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I remember in my last full-time job, the hours spent poring over GDPR, the general counsel worrying about it, what we're going to do about data and so on, and what this meant. And I was calling out, hang on a minute, we got partnerships with these people, and shouldn't we be looking at that? But that all continues as well. But it's odd, isn't it? Although I suppose, I should point out here that the Irish have just changed their corporation tax regime. So maybe,
yeah,
maybe it won't be so attractive. But I think they're embedded there now. Those
I think you're right.
And do you see them all tarred with the same brush, Bob, or is this, because obviously the one we're highlighting here is just because it's in the press at the moment, is Facebook, but do you think it's common across the platforms?
Yeah, I think, what do I think? Facebook is different. There are some problems in the ad tech industry that are generic to the category. For example, the social media problems for teenagers and the way social media is disrupting their self-respect and their self-images and doing harm. That's generic, I think, to the social media category. But there are some things about Facebook that are different. I don't want to get you in trouble here, but my opinion is they're untrustworthy. I think they have proven to be shameless liars. And they're run by a man who doesn't understand his responsibilities. I don't think he has a lot of responsibilities to do, to have integrity about what that platform does to the world. And I don't think he understands it. And I don't think he's sensitive to how much harm they're doing. So Facebook, I think, is, in some ways, the problems they have are generic, and in some ways they're specific to Facebook. And I think, what's her name? Frances Haugens, the whistleblower, said, she had worked at Google and she had worked at YouTube, I think. She said it's different at Facebook. She says they're worse. And I trust her on that. I think she's credible.
And what's her motivation, as they used to say in the movies, Bob, for blowing this whistle?
Who knows? Who knows? I don't really care what her motivation is. I care about what the facts are. And she's brought 10,000 pages worth of facts with her. And that tells the story, not her. The documents tell the story. And, there's a great story about, after the election of 2016, in 2018, there was a study internally by Facebook executives. And they found that about 2/3 of all the people who joined extremist groups in Facebook were led there by Facebook recommendations. I don't know how you can allow that. And they didn't change their, there was discussion about changing that together, and, they did a few little things around the edges, but it's, I don't understand it.
Yeah, I mean, I thought your blog at the time, because this was triggered by Capitol Hill as well, was amazing. Really, really great blog. And obviously,
Thank you.
I think one of my middle sons, I've only got one middle son, who rang me up to say, put the television on, because we didn't know that was happening. And it made a bizarrely welcome break from lockdown and COVID, but it was pretty terrifying. But
it was.
And obviously, just to, put some balance here. I mean, I do think there has been some fantastic work through the platforms to help manage the COVID problems and to help things there. So they do good things. I mean, I think it's this inability to fix the very clear problems.
Yes, I like social media. I admit it. I like it. I connect with people. that I never met before, who are now friends of mine. I I see things that I would never have the opportunity to see. It's entertaining, it's educational, not just social media, but all online activities. And advertising is an important part of it. Advertising keeps it all running, but tracking doesn't. Okay, so the problem isn't advertising. The problem is tracking. These people would do very well if they just stopped tracking and did advertising the way it's always been done, by television and radio and outdoor and print. They never tracked people. They never spied on us. They weren't involved in surveillance on everything we do and everything we say. The online advertising industry doesn't have to do that to make money. They can make, for decades, the advertising industry has made a lot of money without being a detriment to society in the way that online advertising has become a detriment to society. And it wouldn't take that much for us to start being more responsible.
And do you see, I mean, conscious that we're the WFA speaking here and representing, vast amounts of advertising spend, and I think advertisers have tried to make their voices heard along the way, but do you think we should shout louder?
Yes. I think it's very important that the advertising industry shows a little guts and strength and says, what we're doing here is wrong and we have to change it. We can't be wishy-washy about it anymore. It's gotten too dangerous. And, I know a lot of your people who are going to watch this are going to think I'm crazy or something. But take a step back and look at what's happening. In the United States, the wedge that has been driven into society is so deep, and social media has played such an important role in that. We can't ignore that. We can't pretend that doesn't exist. We can't pretend that hasn't happened. It has happened, and we need to face it. The first step, the industry we need a commission of independent people to look at ad tracking, to look at ad tech, and give us an unbiased analysis of what's happened, what it's done from a business standpoint, from a societal standpoint, from a fraud standpoint. Because everyone has an opinion, and the opinions are contradictory, and we need a baseline created by people that we trust to help us understand what's going on.
Yeah, and I think because it's a global phenomenon, it's always suffered. I mean, a bit like, there's no global maritime law and so on. There's no global regulation here. But I would agree with that. I think it would be a great thing to see people being more mindful of the long-term health of society, actually, as triggered by some of these ills.
Yeah.
So just to kind of bring us back to the industry, I mean, if you could change one thing about the ad industry at the moment, what would it be?
Simple: tracking. I'd end third-party tracking. If we could end third-party tracking, we wouldn't end, but we would diminish so many of these problems. We don't have to do third-party. If platforms and brands want to do first-party data gathering, shallow first-party data, that's fine with me. I don't mind them. It's really just a client list. If I go to a website and they want to know who I am and what my email address is and stuff like that, that's fine. They don't need to know what my bank account number is. They don't need to know how many chickens I have in my backyard. They don't need that. And that kind of data gathering is fine with me. But selling that and trading that is not fine with me. And third party and allowing people to follow me around once I go to their website is not fine with me. So if we would end third party tracking, we'd do a whole lot of good for ourselves.
And you'll remember back in Toronto, the WFA had a chart that showed the waterfall of, dollar in this end achieved that impact at the other end. And I think it was 28 cents. Which nobody has ever managed to disprove. And a couple of people said it. Where there's a middleman or middlewoman, there's usually a margin too.
Yes. Didn't the ISBA do a recent study on it like last year and found that 50% of all programmatic dollars never got to the platform or the publisher? They were sucked up by middlemen. And okay, then you get, so 50% of your 50 cents goes to the publisher. Then there's going to be fraud. There's going to be at least 20 to 25% fraud. So then you're down to 25 cents. And then who the heck knows? It's such a black box. That's another reason why this commission would be a very good thing to have, so we could know what's actually happening to online programmatic dollars.
But an interesting thing, and I remember talking to you about this a long while ago, is maybe it's the science teacher in you. You've always used the facts to make your points. These are not based on opinions, and maybe the viewers, listeners of this won't know that. But what's always intrigued me is you're out there fact-based.
I'm very conscientious about that, because there are so many people who just make assertions. And, that's their whole thing. They get up at conferences, assertion after assertion after assertion. And I don't make assertions unless they're provable and I have facts behind me. Now, I also have opinions, and those I express, and opinions, are not necessarily fact-based. But when I make an assertion, I try to, and, in my books the same way. If I say, something, I try to give a factual basis for it.
Yeah. And how, just to go sideways, you'll remember I once asked you, I said, how have you managed to do this? Because you struck me as having the perfect post full-time work life. You were traveling around the world, you were speaking all over the world, you were paid to do that, and you wrote the books about it and took your wife with you, had a great time. Struck me as the perfect way of doing things. How have you managed through lockdown? Are you itching to get on a plane again?
No. As a matter of fact, I just got back from New York, and I swore to my wife, you know what? I've had enough travel for one lifetime. I really have. After when COVID came, I was just about to stop traveling for at least a year, because I'm not a good traveler. I don't particularly enjoy traveling, and I can't sleep when I travel. That's the thing that kills me. I have a terrible time with jet lag. And so I was about to cut way down on my travel to begin with. I've spoken in, I think, 24 countries, and that's a lot of travel every year. And after a while, when you get to be 100 years old, it takes its toll on you, right?
No, it does. It does. I miss bits of it, but not the non-stop nature. And how are you? How are you getting the message out there? Your community is strong. I think that lots of followers. Growing.
Yeah, I have 10,000 people who subscribe to my newsletter, which I try to publish every week. Not always, but often. And then there are a lot of people who read it through Twitter or through LinkedIn. So that's what I do. And, I don't really care how many people read it, or I just write it mainly for myself, because I care about the industry, and I want it to be good. I want it to be healthy. And I'm just not happy with what's been happening.
What do you see that excites you in the industry today? Do you see anything that you go, wow, that's great?
I think I'm happy that people are starting to see some of the fantasy, some of the delusions that have been we've been under for the past 10 years or so. There's a lot of there was a lot of brand babble and a lot of delusion among marketing people about people's relationships with brands, and that people want to be part of a brand's tribe or community, and they want to co-create with brands, and they understand brand meaning, and all this, I call it brand babble stuff. But I think I think some people are starting to come around to my point of view, at least, which is that to most people, their relationship with brands are shallow and transactional and very contingent. The brands are not nearly as important or meaningful to us as most marketers think they are. If you go out on the street and you stop someone and you say, what's the difference between BMW and Mercedes-Benz? What's the difference between Nike and Adidas? What's the difference between McDonald's and Burger King? They'll go, I don't know. McDonald's has the M thing, and Adidas has the swoosh. That's what that's the differentiation that the people on the street have. Now, if you go to their headquarters and look at the marketing stuff they've written, there's all kinds of fancy, the brand means this and our relationship, and all that stuff is like lost on consumers aren't, they don't understand that, they don't play that back. And so I think, I'm hoping that marketers are starting to realize what actually motivates consumers, and there are people who are doing good work on this. Of course, there's Byron Sharp, and there's Karen Nelson Field, and there are other people who are doing good work about this that somehow has not penetrated the advertising industry yet. If I walked into an agency here in the U.S. today and I said, Karen Nelson Field, Byron Sharp, Jenny Romaniuk, Orlando Wood, if I mention, they go, who, what? So we're bad students of what's really happening in the agency business, and as a result, we keep making the same mistakes. But I'm starting to think that maybe some of the correct information is getting through. People are starting to have a different idea of how advertising actually works. That to me, all this one-to-one personalized stuff is not right. That's not how advertising works, by creating fame, by making people familiar and comfortable with brands. That is, if you're looking at the most likely, the most probable way to become successful, it's by being famous. Look at all the great brands in the world. What do they have in common? They're famous. And people don't understand what's the BMW or a Mercedes, what the difference is. These companies, they're famous. That's why they're so successful. And creating fame is a very important part of what marketers do. But we don't, we're so deep in the woods, we can't take a step back and see, how does it really work? And so, that's one of the things I'm going to write about in my new book anyway, is how I think it's all working.
But on your back wall there, maybe there's some brand love going on with your Fender. Have you got a bit of? Have you ever felt the brand love for anything, Bob?
We all have a few brands that we like, that we're closely attached to, that we feel really good about, and I feel good about Apple. I like them. And we all have a handful of brands, but we interact with thousands of brands, and to believe that what's true of 4 or 5 brands is going to be true of thousands of brands is unrealistic. It doesn't work that way. But, watch people shop. They're pretty much on automatic pilot. They go through the supermarket, they pull the stuff they always buy, the same things, and they're not analyzing the brand meaning of their paper towels, regardless of what the briefing documents say. They're not doing that.
No, I was going to say, I believe that there is one of the great tricks of advertising is to create an emotional response. I mean, and when your hand reaches for one kind of paper towel over another, where does that come from? But it's not from a place of brand love. I mean, I despair sometimes when I go to conferences that everybody seems to have the same speech now. And, this used to be an industry where there were lots of mavericks, there were lots of different points of view, and difference was celebrated. Actually, it wasn't. And maybe this is the kind of corporate PR machines that have just aligned everybody to, don't say this, don't say that. A couple of last questions, but before I get to that, what a delight to see you and to listen to you, Bob. Always a pleasure.
Thank you.
And I know it's early in the morning for you, but thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. But before you can escape,
Yes.
Two things.
Yes.
Firstly, what do you think marketeers, CMOs around the world should have at the top of their list at the moment? What should they be thinking about?
If I was a CMO or I was a CEO of a company, let me be a CEO for a minute. I would call my CMO in, and I would call my agency in, and I'd give them a 3-word brief. And the brief would be this: make us famous. That's
Wonderful.
the most important thing. That's the most important thing that marketing communication can do, is to make a company famous. If you're famous, your probability of success is so much greater than your competitor who is not famous.
Yeah. Wonderful advice. Okay, Bob,
Great.
well, listen, good luck with the 6th book. And let's see if our audience can help you get something. And I look forward to seeing you again very soon. Delight to see you. I hope it won't be too long. And let's hope next time we meet, tracking will have stopped. Thank you so much for your time. Have a great day over there.
My pleasure. You too, David. Take care.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that chat as much as I did. Back in November, in the run-up to COP26, where we thought it would be entirely appropriate to get somebody from the world of sustainability to come and talk to us. I'm looking forward to talking to Sonia Timier from Reckitt, who looks after sustainable brands. Hope you're all well. Take care, and long live the Ad Contrarian. Bye.